Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? Good. So we talk a lot about resilience, reliability, observability, security, obviously all conditions that we want our apps and systems to have. But today, Malin is here to teach you the secret. Because the truth is we work with computers and software, but the key to success is a very human thing, and that is empathy. So without further ado, I'll let Malin take over with empathy, the secret sauce of resilience.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thanks. Let's hope I deserve that applause. Cool. Yeah. So this is going to be more of a lay back and enjoy the ride kind of talk. If you have questions, for sure, come at me. But there will be hopefully just something for you to take in and take with you. So yeah, I want to talk about empathy, the secret sauce of resilience. I've already given away the secret sauce of my first slide, but that's okay. Quick introduction. Who am I? I'm Malin. Where I work and what I do isn't really important for this talk, but I'll tell you anyway. I work for a company called Segovia Current Agents Bank, and they manage payments to hard-to-reach places. So, for example, if you want to send payment to a person in Africa without a bank account, that type of stuff. We do Java, Kotlin. We use the usual stack. Not important. What is important is that I have, for the first time, been able to work in a team and also hire a team of people who are so empathetic that I've never enjoyed my life more. And I think that's nice. When I think about who I also am, is a quick confession. I'm super anxious. I have that since I was a kid, but I've still chosen, I've still chosen to work in a field where, sometimes things happen or sometimes you get stressed. And I like to keep that to a minimum if possible. So why is this talk so important? I think it's just what everything boils down to in the end. I feel like empathy is the game changer. I want people to embrace it more and see it as a strength. And I'll tell you about why that's so important. Again, I'm an anxious person, but I'm also on call. And those two things don't mesh well. Especially if you're the only one on call and you're on call on like New Year's Eve and you know that someone's hacked something in that will fail the second the next year ticks over, and you can't do Bleigießen because that's considered poisoning yourself. For those of you who are not necessarily familiar with what Bleigießen is, I don't know why this segue is important, but it's leptomancy, I think, where you melt lead in your home and you throw it in water, which I don't recommend. I think it's also been outlawed in Germany. But anyway, so you can't do fun stuff while you're on call. You can't get drunk and anything. I'm just going to wait for a second for people to settle down. I'll tell you more about Bleigießen. Okay.
They just rang the bell downstairs.
Oh. I thought coffee might be out.
I can bring a tray.
That would be lovely.
Do you want one?
No, I'm good, thanks. I'll just do a quick recap for everybody who's already been here. I'll make this quick.
More coming.
Cool. Well, those of you who were already here, know 2 slides already. This is the wordiest slide. Don't worry. There's still space in the front row. I don't know if we need the signs, the 10-minute signs. I'll just move this.
I think we're starting 10 minutes late anyway, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll take my sweet time.
I guess I'll just show you 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, good to go.
Yep, cool. Okay. Hi again. I was very kindly introduced earlier, but I'll do it again myself. I'm Malin. I love empathy, and I'm going to tell you about why. We talked about resilience before, again, very kindly in my introduction. This is, if you need to sell it to your boss, this is a DevOps resilience talk. If you need to sell it to yourself, it's just about being nice. So, yep, who am I? I'm Malin. Again, where I work, I work for a company that does payments into hard-to-reach places. For example, if you want to send money to a hospital in Africa and you don't want the government to take 50%, you use us. We have a normal stack. Nothing super cool about that. But what we do have that's not normal, unfortunately, is a team that is an absolute joy to work with. Mondays, I look forward to incidents that are fun, etc. So I'm also anxious. I said this earlier, so I was a little bit anxious when the room was so empty, but thanks for all coming in. Now it's just stage fright to get over. But yes, I am very anxious. Naturally, I don't like surprises, and I'm on call, which means that there are incidents and there are surprises, and I need to deal with it somehow, and this is how I do. Why? Yeah, I already told you all of that. For us, resilience is really important as a team because we don't want to be scared the whole time. We want to be able to do coding and, ship to production quickly and fast without needing to worry about it. We don't want to hold ourselves back from releasing because we're afraid that something will break. Because again, that's the worst thing you can do, really, if you're afraid. So what we wanted to do is build a team that is resilient, but not just on a technical level, but also on like an emotional level. Because if we continue to pretend as if we're all just like robots who code and have no emotions, then I think that's a big misnomer, and we are so much more than that. But yeah, from a tech perspective, we want to deliver changes, we want to deliver them fast, and we want to be kind of confident about them. But we also kind of want to not care too much about being confident about them. Because if you care that much, you might as well not release. So when I talk about resilience, I want to just make sure that we are all on the same basis of what that means. There are two different factors here. There's reliability and then resilience. So reliability is what your user experiences. If something happens, can they still use the website the way they expect it to? Can they still use your services? Will you suddenly lose money in the ether? That's not a good thing. So hopefully not that. But resilience is kind of what we invest in ourselves or the business to make sure that we are okay. The software is okay, our customers are okay. And where we want to make that investment is always an interesting question. There is all sorts of cool new software you can buy to monitor yourself to the nitty-gritty, but I think I would like to argue that we should invest in culture. Culture is, for me, an interpretation of what do we commonly all believe in. What are some commonly held beliefs? What do we act upon? And if you change the culture and a belief, that also will change behavior. Because if you all believe in the same thing, you probably act upon it. And what we believe in is that we want to be high-performing, we don't want to be afraid, we want to be confident, and we don't want to be too worried about what happens when it goes wrong, because it will. It will go wrong. So you might as well get over that emotionally or get through it with empathy. And I mentioned this earlier, to me, the biggest sign of how resilient a company is when you look at them and how they behave within incidents. Is it a panic? Is it something people kind of jump on and help out? Or is it something where everybody thinks, thank God I'm not on call, I don't have to deal with this, poor person who's on call. That person, most of the time, is, I don't know, afraid to mess it up or not to fix it or whatever. And I've been that person too many times. So looking at incidents specifically, what we can do is we can learn from them, right? So we have an incident, we recognize it, we fix it, probably at 1 a.m. on a Saturday, with a big mug of coffee and a big heart full of hate. And then we fix it, or we fix it together. Maybe there's multiple people on call and you jump on a call and you can moan about how annoying the incident is, and then you're already kind of feeling a little bit better. But thinking about incidents, this is where we can kind of judge a company by how do we react to incidents. And what we really want to do is to invest in the culture specifically here, because incidents happen, you can fix them probably most of the time. If not, you have a bigger problem, you involve more people. But if you are learning from incidents technically, you can also learn from them in terms of culture. But yeah, if you learn from them technically, for example, think about what kind of incident analysis happens afterwards. Do you write it up? Do you figure out what went wrong and then try to figure out how you could have prevented it? Or do you write something up and then someone up the chain reads it? Or is it just a stat? Or what does actually happen when you have incidents? Do you just improve the system and move on? Or do you do any sort of further learning? So incident analysis itself, I think if you have the idea of blame, can be super harmful because you're trying to think about why did it happen? Who made the mistake? Who made that commit that made me get up at 1 a.m? And that, if it was yourself, I think you'd be quiet about it. But if it wasn't yourself, that could harbor some sort of emotion. Or if it was you who caused it, it would harbor a big amount of emotion of guilt or whatever, not feeling happy about that. So I feel like we need to rephrase the whole idea, because when we look at incidents, we keep trying to figure out what went wrong, and we apply hindsight bias, which is super dangerous here, to an emotional state by thinking we could have avoided it. And realistically, we did our best and we didn't avoid it, so we probably couldn't have avoided it. So I think most of the time what incidents really are surprises. And if you rephrase it as a surprise, it kind of takes away the blame aspect of it. Because if you can't predict a surprise, you're just like every other person. If you can predict surprises all the time, then you should go into clairvoyance or tarot reading or whatever it is. But if we rephrase it as this, an incident is just a surprise. No one saw it coming. We all try to avoid it, but we just can't all the time because incidents will happen. Then the blame aspect kind of falls away. And that's the nice thing about that. So when we ask ourselves then, or your boss comes and asks you, why didn't you anticipate this? Surprise, suddenly it doesn't make sense anymore to ask those kind of guilt-finding questions. And here is something that is not a surprise. We build complex systems, which means things will happen. Things will break, and it'll be fine. And you'll deal with it, and you'll get over it, but they will happen. So why not just learn from them whenever they do happen? So resilience to me is a mindset change, and a mindset change for us also means it's a cultural change. And I will tell you about how to do this, because I always feel like it's nice enough to say, hey, just change your culture. Bye. That's not really super useful in terms of taking something home from this talk. So basically, I want to show you how to make that culture change. First of all, you want to develop what we call a learning loop. This is like the workout for us as a company. We need to train this muscle over and over so that we can make sure that we're good at this. So for example, first of all, what's the value of the culture? The value is we want to deal with incidents in a way that doesn't make us worried about them or scared of them or want to go off the on-call rota because it's causing us too much headache. We want to see, okay, how can we observe this happening? How can we observe the incidents? Can we measure it and so on? What are the principles that matter? We want to fix it fast, but we also want to stay happy. We don't want people to be burnt out, etc. And so what do we do process-wise? So what do we put one person on call? Do we put multiple people? Do we have like good run books that make you less afraid of the situation, etc.? So we're basically just practicing a thing that we believe is important. And when we keep practicing and practicing, then we develop a culture of that. So an example here, when we look at an outage or an incident, is a learning loop exercise. So everything's fine. It's Friday, 5 p.m. You close your laptop. Your friend is already downstairs at the pub or the bar, and they say, oh, I bought your beer already. Get down here. And your laptop's just about to close, and you get a ping. And the ping says, someone deleted the database, or that's bad, but someone dropped from the production DB. Okay, that will be very bad, but it could be something like, hey, our provider is down, or whatever it is. It's an outage, it's annoying, it is at a very unfortunate time, because you were this close to your Feierabend beer, or your end of day beer. But then you have to, anyway, go into it. You fix, you diagnose, you detect what the problem was, whatever. You did some learning You figured out what the problem was, and then you improve the system. Most of the time, incidents are resolved by fixing something or telling your customers not to log on for the weekend or something. But yeah, that's normally the learning loop. But what we can do is, learn from it reactively. Ouch. As I said, you can figure out what went wrong. You can figure out what more tests you might need, etc. But even better than reactive learning is proactive learning. Surprise, surprise. And when we do proactive learning, we can introduce our favorite thing in these planned structures, which is chaos. That sounds potentially a little bit scary. So let's make it not scary. If you want to read about chaos in these kind of systems, then you can read about chaos engineering. And this is my good friend Russ's literature. You can definitely buy if you want to. He's written a lot about it, but because I don't expect you to buy and read those books in the next 20 seconds, this is a summary. Please still buy the books. I'm not trying to get Russ out of business here. But yeah, chaos engineering is the discipline of experimenting on a system, important, in order to build confidence in the system's capability to withstand turbulent conditions in production. Again, I think you all remember the first time you pushed something into production, how scary that was, or that everything that can go wrong will go wrong in production because you have turbulence like servers going down, but you also have turbulence like users who always figure out new ways to break your stuff. So these things are there, they will be there, and you need to be able to withstand them. So key points to take away from here is we want to experiment, we want to build confidence, and we want to withstand turbulent conditions. The key thing is, for chaos engineering, is remember that incident from Friday afternoon. If you introduce chaos to your system yourself, you get to choose when it happens. That's the only difference. But you get to choose that it happens on a Wednesday morning when you've all kind of took time aside to do it together. You can also have made the decision that there will be free breakfast or pizza to keep your engineers happy. I highly recommend giving engineers free food. I don't say that with any intention whatsoever. But the key thing about it is it will happen anyway, so why not just do it at a time that suits you? So let's look at this game day experience. It's the exact same loop, but instead of normal being normal at a Friday afternoon and you're just about to go for a drink, it's the game day that you knew was going to happen. You can pause your normal projects. You get the time to deal with it. You're not under the same amount of pressure. People are prepared for this. In terms of you prepared that something will happen. What happens still needs to be a surprise so that you can deal with it adequately. And it's not just like a riddle. Because if you can anticipate already what you could click for it to go wrong, you probably should test that in advance of the game day. So ideally, you want to go into the game day thinking, okay, everything I can think of going wrong, we've tested and we fixed. Or we don't think it's going to be that important and come up, which is also fine. That's just prioritization. But then something will happen. So the chaos master or whoever you've selected can decide what goes wrong. They can pull a plug or they can delete the database in production. Ooh. So choose someone without the admin credentials to do that, maybe. But the key thing is do it in production. Because otherwise, staging will always be like production, but it's never going to be production. You can throw over staging all the time, but it's not going to be the same because you're not actually testing the same system. But do it anyway, because it might just happen anyway, but you just get to pick when. So again, you can do the same. You can detect, diagnose, fix. You learn or you improve, But what you can also do is, in a chaos experiment, for example, go through it like this. You have a chaos experiment. Then you surface some dark debt. This is important because, as I said before, if you surface something you knew was broken beforehand, then that's kind of just bad quality control because you kind of knew it was going to happen. What you really want here is you don't just want to practice people reacting to your incident. You also want to surface dark debt. You want to see, okay, what happens if I pull this? Are we automatically recovering? Do we know what to do? If yes, great. If not, dark debt. You just reduce your dark debt in the system. So that's good. Sell this to your managers like that. It's good stuff. You'll find stuff that you want to fix anyway. But you also don't have to feel bad about dark debt being there because, again, no one predicted it being there. So there's no blame game there either. Then you can learn and improve from it. You can chaos test it, which you've done. You've run through the chaos exercise. You fixed it, hopefully. And then you can validate it. So you can say, okay, if we ran this again, would we now be able to, survive it fine, and would we be panicked again? But what you can do, which is even better than continuous validation, is continuous verification. So the second you have a chaos exercise, why not write into a test and make sure that for all future circumstances, you're also testing for that scenario. You can use, you've all heard of chaos monkeys on Netflix or whatever, but you can find tests through that saying, okay, we fixed it in the past. We want to make sure it's fixed in the future. And it's important to note that you can shake your whole system. Chaos testing can be done absolutely everywhere. So imagine you just have a tree and you shake and you just see what falls out. But you can also shake specific things. So for example, for infrastructure, platform applications, you can do automated experiments. To practice it for people and processes, you can do game days and so on. In some of my talks, when I say this, I get the question asked, what if my manager thinks it's important to kind of do this kind of test, but like at random times, not at a scheduled time, because I want it to be as close as possible to reality. And I say to them, just take the day off, all of you. That's a real chaos test for management. If they want it to be close to reality and they want to treat you like that, that will be reality. So just leave, have an ice cream, and see how close to reality they want it to be then afterwards. So yeah, always remember that your people are your assets. Don't treat them weird because you can. But yeah, again, the mental health of your engineers is important, just as much as the mental health of the managers. So if you don't care about an engineer waking up at 1 a.m, you have a problem, generally speaking. If you'd like to avoid that, then you probably care about your engineer, so that's good. But again, you can do this with everything. This is why people put like their whole companies on 2 different planes, right? What if one crashes? So just have half the people take the day off. See what happens. Yeah?
How do you involve your customers? Because if somebody pulls a random plug in production, it might affect
Yeah,
some customers in your call center. So
for sure. So I think if you can, for example, give you like your call centers a warning saying, hey, we're doing this. If someone complains, just be aware that there might be like surplus calls today or whatever. But other than that, your system needs to be able to just do that, because your system might as well just do that because of an incident. And you can't really pre-warn people that an incident's going to happen, right? Because you wouldn't know that either. But it's an investment that you make for your customers to make sure that they get the best possible care, if you will. Because for a game day experiment, you have, let's say, a whole team or a whole engineering department available to fix it. Whereas in a normal incident, there'll be one really tired engineer trying to fix it. Yeah. So again, it is risky, but it's risky on purpose. And we de-risk it by putting everybody on it, and we're all in it together, and we'll fix it. But the dark debt is there, whether you find it or not. Good question, though. Thank you very much. But I'll move on to the secret sauce. And I don't know if you remember from the first slide, the secret sauce is, in fact, empathy. Shocker. So I think unless you can practice empathy, you can't do chaos experiments without getting the genuinely most out of it. You can fix your systems. That's it. Fantastic. But what you really want is to develop an empathetic culture, because that makes you truly resilient. And I will tell you a little bit why, and maybe I'll get you to feel why. So as an empathetic person, I know that I don't enjoy interactions with the audience when I'm in the audience. I don't like that at all because I feel put on the spot. So I'm going to do an audience interaction where you don't have to participate in any way that I can tell. So if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. I won't be able to tell. So I'll tell you about a situation in a minute, and all I want you to do is just imagine what it feels like to be in it. Practicing empathy with yourself. Just tune in, see how you feel. And then I'm gonna change the situation, and I want you to feel if that changes the situation for you emotionally as well. So you can have a nap, or whatever you like, or you can participate, whichever you prefer. Okay, so the situation is the following. You are sitting in a dark room. In front of you is a table. On the table is a bomb. That's bad. The bomb is ticking down like you see in every movie. You look at your hands and you're holding like tweezers and scissors or whatever, some sort of tools to get rid of the bomb or to make sure it, what's it called again, the word? When you diffuse, thank you very much. When you diffuse the bomb, so you have diffusion tools in your hand, but it's you and the bomb, and in the room with you are people around you just looking at you, just staring at you, seeing if you can diffuse that bomb, and it's ticking and it's ticking and it's ticking and it's ticking, and you don't know what to do, but you're there to do it. So when I imagine myself in that situation, I am stressed. I didn't go into bomb diffusion for a reason. That is not my job. I don't think I would do very well under that amount of stress. But yeah, I feel watched, I feel uncomfortable, I feel out of my depth. I don't feel good. Now I'm gonna say one word, one sentence. And I want you to monitor if there's a change in how you feel about the situation. So again, you're there, bomb, diffusion tools in your hand, one lamp just swinging over the table. And now I'm going to tell you it's an escape room. It's not real. The bomb's not real. The people who are looking at you are your friends, probably, or people that you've decided to go to an escape room with, at least. The situation is an exercise. It's for you to look at and see, oh, can I do this? If I can't, then I'll have a friend maybe look at it, or I can do a different puzzle if I don't really want to do this. And within a matter of that sentence, you've changed the way you look at the problem, and you change the way you feel about it. So for example, if I'm in an escape room, I love escape rooms. I get stupidly competitive in escape rooms with myself and my sister. But suddenly I would actually be quite excited about this. I would be like, okay, I don't know if I can defuse this bomb, but I mean, it's not real. It's not going to blow me up. That'll be a terrible business model. So if I can't do it, maybe my friend can, or maybe they help me, or I do something else. So the difference between real life incidents and a chaos exercise isn't that it's not any more, any less real than like an incident or whatever, but it's still not life and death, because it's just your job. It's just a program. Highly likely, no one will die because of an incident. Very, very unlikely, unless you work on, I don't know, active in-use medical equipment or whatever it may be. But very, very, very highly likely none of you will die. And so I've introduced my first very important tool of empathy, which is frame of reference. I think we all know what it feels like to look at your life and you realize, okay, these are actual real life parts of my life. There's my family, they exist, they're very real. When my mom calls me 5 times a day, it's very real. I have health. Hopefully that health is good. If that health is bad, it's going to impact my life. I have friends, I have resources such as money for my job, or I have a place to live, a roof over my head, all these things. These are real life things. These are not. This is frame of work stuff. So in the work frame of reference, the frame of reference is within your life frame of reference, because within your life you work. But you have things like projects, deadlines, and hierarchy that matter in your work frame of reference. If I need to make that more clear than anything else, I'll go through them all one by one. Projects. This project is the most important project that this company is working on. Oh no, never mind. This new project is the most important project that this company is working on. Has anybody ever heard that maybe? So the importance of something like a project, even on the work firm reference, can change like that. So even though your manager or whoever is telling you this is the most important thing, we have to get this done by Friday, which brings me to deadlines. Deadlines aren't real. They are work management tools. They are not a ticking time bomb. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but shock horror, deadlines can be moved. Sometimes they have to be moved because the client wants to not pay you for an extra week, or because someone's on holiday or someone's out sick, and suddenly it's not that big of a deal to move the deadline. So yes, they are project management tools, but they are not real. And I hate it when people pretend that they're real, because realistically, someone in sales came up with it most of the time. And now you have to fit your life to meet this deadline, which is not even realistic on top of being real. But most importantly, hierarchy is not real. It might feel like it while you're at work, but that's bad. And it's definitely not the case outside of work, because if your boss came to your house and rearranged your furniture, you would say, what are you doing? This is not yours to do. Or if they came and told you to plant tomatoes in your garden, you would say, you have no power here. So please remember that that is actually also the case about when people ask you to stay longer than you're being paid for. Or, I don't know, do you really need to take that holiday? Yes, you do. So these are things that are important in the work context, but they are not, and I repeat, not part of your life. And this happens sometimes. This is dangerous to happen, because this is when like the feelings come in. So for example, if I'm stressed because of a project or a deadline or because of a manager, I'll feel stressed in my real life experience. I will probably go home stressed, and I'll be, I don't know, moody or whatever. But this happens because we don't do this enough. Put it back in the box. The box is a very clear boundary around the work life cycle. And if you remember this, oh God, Jesus, 10 minutes I've got left. Ooh. If you remember this, remember that in an incident situation too. It is just an incident that happens to a software online. Yeah. Worst thing that I've ever experienced while I was in an incident was that people couldn't, used to work for a neobank, and people couldn't deposit cash on the 1st of January. And that's not great, and your customers will be impacted, but they'll survive it, most likely. So yeah, if you have more critical systems, put more people on call or whatever, but it is, in the end, just a task in your work. I'll move on because I have 10 minutes left. Acceptance and improvement. This is another really important one. Please trust yourself and your fellow engineers that they don't just code crap on purpose. I always do my best, and then 2 months later, I realize that that was not great. And then I'll do better, because I've learned something in those 2 months. But please do not get mad at past people because they couldn't foresee something that you're stumbling upon today. And I think that's especially important if you're one of those people who is like, oh, who wrote this code? It's so terrible. And then you click and it was you. So be mindful, be careful with yourself and others. We always try to do our best at this given time. If we just trust each other that that's what we're doing, we're not going to have to be worried about putting something in because it might not be perfect in 3 months' time. We can just proceed, learn from our mistakes, and go for it. So for example, it's also an interesting topic when you think about the type of stuff we work on, and you think about it in an escape room context. So for example, we've picked a Sherlock Holmes themed room, and then you have one friend who's like, oh, I hate Sherlock Holmes. Why is this all Sherlock Holmes? And you're like, well, you picked it. We all picked it. So, and that's the industry. We all picked an industry where you have to fix stuff, things will break, you will make mistakes, just accept that. Things will break. And the second you accept it, you can just deal with it as any other part of your coding career. You will deal with incidents, and you can hopefully deal it in a kind manner. Yeah, so improvement is what I mentioned just before. Yep, people do their best. If you accept the chaos, then you can kind of put yourself there mentally and move forward and say, okay, there will be chaos, there will be dark debt, we'll find it, and then we'll fix it. instead of being like, why? Why was there like that? Oh no. We should all be sad instead of actually actively fixing stuff. This is about diversity, but it's a little bit different about like the usual talking about diversity. And it's more like the invisible diversity in the way we're all different from each other. So we're back in the escape room. We're trying to pick teams. And we try to see who does better in an escape room. So team one, we've got a geography genius. This person is a subject matter expert. If you see the parallels, well done. This person is probably a very well-versed geography genius. They do know a lot about geography. They know every country and every capital and every river and every mountain range. So they're going to be super useful if you get into a geography-themed escape room. And now the next person is also a geography genius. Cool. Expertise if we have a geography-themed escape room. The other 4 are also geography geniuses, so that's really, really good if you have a geography-themed theme room. But if you don't, then that could be difficult. Team 2, we have, again, seems to be a lot of these around, subject matter experts. We have a geography genius, again, fantastic. But this time we have another person, and that's the detail diver. So this person will really look at a singular thing and go as deep as they can into it, whatever it may be. That could be really useful. The next person is the big picture thinker. They might take a step back and say, wait a minute, we're in a Sherlock Holmes themed room, maybe we look at the pipe or something like that. We have the acrobat. The acrobat doesn't really care about finding stuff out, but they're really good at execution. So if you need someone to Mission Impossible across a tunnel with laser beams, or someone to, go into the admin console, this will be a good candidate for that. Then we have, to me, a very important person, the mood maker. This is your friend that you're going to hang out with them, you're going to have a good time. You're going to smile. They're going to remind you this is actually supposed to be fun. They remind you you're getting paid good money to do what you're doing, and it's not real. So they are the person to make sure that everybody remembers what it's actually about, that you're doing it. And this is the person, the fresh set of eyes, that is most likely the most undervalued, but probably one of the most important people. These are people who are not subject matter experts, but they come in without all the bias. And while every one of you is a escape room connoisseur, they will probably say, oh, what about that key? Well, if we just use that key that's just lying on the table, and you'll all be like, yeah, fair enough. And to talk more about that specific person, I want to talk a little about equality and inclusion. And when we talk about making sure all those different teams, just to quickly recap, I think we can all agree this is potentially a better suited team to face the majority of escape rooms. Maybe the geography themed one is won by these guys, but this is much more resilient in the majority of cases. So equality and inclusion, we want to make sure that each person on the team, whichever role they fill, is bringing to the table what they can bring to the table. And one of the really important things is that you make sure together as a team that you're all on the same page first. So for example, if you are the set of new eyes, you might need a bit of context. You might need a bit of explaining. If you are the subject matter expert, you might want to give that person the explanation and the context, because you can assure yourself that you actually understood it. I think most of the time when I realize I haven't understood something is because I didn't actually explain it properly, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need to do some reading. But it's also important to not shy away from being the set of fresh eyes. I think a lot of people get in a rut where they say, oh, I'm an expert in this, so I'll only really want to do things like this, and forget about the opportunity that they have to help others with completely fresh perspectives from where you've potentially come from. And inclusion I mentioned here because inclusion, people always think, oh, I'm inclusive anyway, I'm not really actively rejecting anybody, so that makes me inclusive. But what you really can do is reach out with inclusion. And one of the tips I have is whenever there's like a work group and I want people's advice, I make sure that all they have to bring to the discussion is their opinion. I will provide them with all the context and information that they need, and all I want from them is their opinion. And they can really deliver that to me when I've made it clear that, hey, you have all the background knowledge that you need. I just want to know how you feel about it. In an inviting way, ideally. But yeah, so I think I actually did time stuff good. So to summarize, you will have chaos. It will happen. Incidents will happen. And they will potentially cost you money. And they might piss off some customers. But if you can make it fun, because you make it like an exercise and you feed your employees, and you do it at a time that's not super annoying, then you can actually practice this. And the more you practice, the less scary it'll be. If you've been in 10,000 incidents, you're not going to pick up that phone and be really worried about it. If you've been in one, you probably will. So if you do it all together, you practice that bone, that muscle of handling incidents in a kind way together, you're going to be just fine. Thanks for your time. And thank you. And if you want to learn more about empathy, here's some cool books. So this is the slide I would recommend maybe taking a picture of if you want. I don't get paid for these books, but they're just good books. Yeah, always fun. If there are, I'll get out of your way. If there are any questions, I will be happy to answer anything. Yes, please.
I recognize many engineers feel responsible for their product, their production environment. And when something goes bad, they feel responsible. And then work shifts into private life.
Yeah.
By their choice, not of because a boss says you must.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
There is a lot of empathy because they feel we need to solve this.
Yeah. I think, so the question was, well, the statement question was that most people feel ownership of their work to a point where they feel empathetic with anybody else who might have to fix it, but they feel ownership of it and they want to be the ones to fix it. So they let it stress you out in your work life and in your private life. And I think that's super fair. I think it's great to take ownership, but I think it's also important to recognize where your ownership ends. So you are definitely in charge of making cool stuff and testing it well and reviewing your colleagues' work, but you need to be able to have faith in the fact that even if you make mistakes, you can fix them the next morning. Or if you're on call, you need to fix it at that time. But I think the key thing is the empathy aspect that you need to have with yourself instead of the code at that moment. And you can say, yes, I owned this, I made this, but I made it the best that I could at the time. So if it's not perfect, I'm going to live with that. And my friends and coworkers will live with that because they know how much effort I put into this. They know I will jump up, but it's important to really cut yourself off. And to practice that, it's good to remember that you will probably not have one job forever. So if you think about something that was your baby at one job and then you change jobs, you will have to cut the cord, right? You can't keep coding on your previous thing. So that will happen. You might also retire, fingers crossed, or not. But if you do, suddenly these things will also no longer have that impact on your life. So it's important to remind yourself of the boundary that exists by just imagining yourself in a different position. I know what you mean, though. I know the feeling. I remember, coding on stuff that I feel very responsible for. But at the end of the day, I'm being paid for my services, unless I do it for fun, in which case you're doing it for fun, and people can be grateful for that. But you're being paid for your services, but you're not being paid to emotionally attach yourself to an unhealthy level. And it's not beneficial to you or anybody else, because if you get too emotionally involved in it, you might not be as receptive towards change of it. Or you might not be as receptive to handing it over to the next person. And it is, in the end, software, so that's important to make the distinction. Thanks, though. Any other questions? Yep.
Would you think that when it comes to chaos engineering, there is a kind of maturity curve where you would eventually reach a point where it is the right time to start doing this? Or do you think any project, any company should do this from the first day?
That's a really good question. So just for anybody who needs the mic to listen, the question was basically at what point of the lifetime of a project or a system is it the right time to start chaos engineering and chaos testing? I would say as soon as you dare, but be daring. because the longer you wait, the longer you miss out on just the practice that you get to do. So for example, it's, I would say, as soon as something's in production and you're happy with what you're producing and delivering to customers, that's a good time to start chaos engineering in production. Because whatever can happen in production will happen in production, and you'll be much more able to resolve it, as we discussed earlier, if you have the whole team there to do it. So yeah, maybe figure out, at the point where you're confident enough to go into production, test in production. Yeah. The question was, is there a sweet spot of size for the team included in a chaos exercise? I think it could be, I don't think it should be one person, to be super duper clear, because that's just stressful again. I think it could be the most fun to have as many people as you can on it. It might make sense to do something a little bit more siloed or segmented. If you have like 250 engineers and you have specific topics, you have like maybe a DevOps chaos day or a payments chaos day or this and that chaos day. But I think every once in a while, I would just have everybody ready, start the chaos and see who's actually needed. Because most of the time, I think we're too quick to say, oh, this is actually not my problem. You know, my code doesn't touch that code, so whatever. But you might really learn something from getting involved anyway. So what I would recommend the most is to have like a comfortable team size, to have a chat, maybe like 5 to 8 people for one specific exercise, maybe even from different teams. So you have, one of each expert in the team, and then just go for it. See what comes out, and if everybody else could be available, if you need to pull them in.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I think we're going to take a quick break. Again, if you have questions, you can still interact with Malin in the app on Wova. You can like this talk. You can add notes. You can still interact with her, ask her questions. So be sure to download it, check it out, check out all the features. But yeah, thank you so much. I think everyone learned something from this talk, even if you're not in, the technical space. So thank you.
I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. If you have any other questions, just find me. But thanks for your questions and thanks for your attention.